Good morning.
Hello. I think we can go ahead and get started. It's 10:01. If people join us, they join us, that's fine. Brittany, do you have something you want to cover
Yeah, no,
first?
I just wanted to, I mean, the same spiel we always give, but I always just want to remind people, since we are recording, they can turn their cameras on, they can unmute themselves. So just be mindful of that. If you have to step away, if you have to take a phone call, life happens, things happen. But if you don't want your video recorded, um, please don't turn your camera on. Those lovely little things that we just want to make sure everyone's aware of in the day and age of this Zoom digital world that we live in.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Okay.
Go ahead,
Emma,
Angela.
are you going to share your screen, Emma?
Yes, so I'm going to share my screen, and today we're going to talk about a couple things. The first half of this meeting, we're going to talk about how to enter expenses. I'm going to share a document that will be shared after this call, but then we're going to have somebody walk through what it looks like on your side, so that way you get a sneak peek into how to enter expenses for your quarterly reports.
And we're doing this
Okay.
because this is the first year in Una Amplifund. You'll hear us use them both. It's really officially full on Una at this point, but Amplifund has been in my head for 5 years, so it's hard to get it out. Um, this is the first year that we are requiring programs to enter expenses into Amplifund, into Una. So we want to show you how to do it before you start doing it. So if you've got questions, feel free to reach out to us. And we know some of you have done this already with other grants, but some of you may have never seen this, and some of you may be in the middle of that somewhere. So we know that we have a wide range of knowledge and skill set potentially within this group.
All right, so this document was made specifically for this professional development meeting, and like I said, we'll share it out after. There might be some version of this floating around that has more information on it, but this is again specifically for the expenses. So we'll just get right into it. We have our table of contents, and I'm going to review this pretty quickly so that way we can jump into the actual live sharing of expenses and such. Okay, so table of contents. At the beginning, it's just some general information about how to navigate Una. So looking at the navigation tabs, the optional toolbar, user information, etc. Then we go into some grant details. So these are the relevant details about the IBT grant or whatever grant you're looking at. We kindly ask that you do not change the name of the grant in the grant details, so that way it stays the same. You do have the option to do that, but please do not do that. So you can look at your recipient grant manager. I don't think you can change the grant manager or the responsible person, but you can change the recipient grant manager in there. And then you would hit save, all of that would go and be saved. And then we're going to go look at some reporting period information. So this first one that is listed is your achievement reporting period. So that's your performance measures. And you will just go through these directions, post-award management,
Just keep in mind now everything looks blue instead of
Yes,
green,
thank
but
you.
it is the same. They are the same steps, same wording, same everything, just a different color in the background.
Yep. And it'll say UNA up here. Thank you. I meant to say that at the beginning, but totally slipped my mind. For the achievement period, you would put in the correct quarter period. And then make sure you're attaching the performance measures chart under the achievements tab,
And you know which tab you're in by which one is blue.
blue or
Because you should have there should be an expenses tab and an achievement tab. So if you're in achievements, it's blue and the expenses is grayed out. If you're in expenses, it's blue and the achievements is grayed out. So if you're not sure which one ever one has the color, that's the one that you're in.
correct. Yeah, thank you. Okay, then I'm going to go through. You're going to save and close, submit your report to ICCB. So saving it, I will say this one more time in the expenses section, but saving it does not submit it. And if you, for whatever reason, accidentally close too early or you need to correct a mistake, please reach out to us so we can reject the report and you guys can go back in and make edits. And that's the same for both the achievement as well as the expenses.
And it happens. We're human.
Yes.
So
Yes.
do not feel like you have to write us some huge apologetic email. Just send us an email that says, "Hey, I clicked on the wrong tab button. Can you reject my quarter 1 report for fiscal?" Yep, we'll send it back to you. You can do what you need to do. It takes us 30 seconds. So it's not a problem for us to do it either. So
Yep. So then this section is about reviewing your budget. It's more informational and not mandatory that you do it. So just take a look at this when you receive this document for your own knowledge. Then we go into the expenses and expense reporting section. This is what we are going to have Margaret look through and walk us through. So I'm going to talk a little bit quickly here, watching the time. So this is where you're going to track your expenses for the quarter. So again, you're going to go into the post-award section, then you're going to go to financial and then expenses. You have to enter your expenses first in order to create the report. So you're going to go through and you're going to plug in all your expenses, category line item, direct costs, expense date, etc. The one thing to note is that it will autofill to whatever day you are currently on. So if you are backtracking and putting in expenses from a prior date, just make sure you change that date to the correct one.
So, for example, if you're not plugging in your expenses until you do your quarter report, say
Right.
April 20th, Una will autofill that date for the expense to April 20th. So when you go to plug in your expenses, it will not plug in for quarter 1, which is January 1 through March 31. It will want to plug in April 20th into quarter 2 expenses. You can change it. Just remember, you have to change it. So you can look at your expenses before you hit submit, before you hit close. And if they don't show up, that's what I always tell people to start with. Check the date that you plugged it in for, because that's the easiest fix. Go put it in a March 31 date, a March 15 date, whatever, in that time window that you need it to be in.
So then this is just further information about entering your expenses. Some important things to consider are right here. So all expense entries and updates for the period must be completed before the closeout for that reporting period. Again, the date must match the date in which the expense was incurred. Also the expense status must be set to review. And again, we'll walk you through that and what that means if you're like, I have no idea what she's talking about. And then filters to view the previous expenses. Yeah, so grantees must configure the expense filters to view the previous expenses. So then you're going to go through, and on this page, you're going to run the report so that way you can see all your expenses. And then we get into the actual closing of that reporting period. So this is where you're going to create the report and go through. This is similar to what you did for the achievements, or what you will do for the achievements. So you're going to go down to management, reporting periods, and you're going to click the add button to create that. And then that's where you're going to plug in your expenses that you previously put into Una into the report. I think this might be the last section. So again, just save does not mean submit. It saves your information within Una for future submission. Close submits your report to ICCB. In a lot of instances, we do have some grantees that are like, no, I already submitted, but they just click the save button. It's happened across the board, so it's nothing to freak out about, but just make sure you're hitting close rather than save. And it'll ask you again if you're sure you want to close. So make sure you're hitting close, not cancel. And then we have some links just for you guys to have. So housekeeping user tips, Una links, Una support. These are all, as they say, Amplifund, but these should bring you directly to the Zendesk, which is their help desk, their email, etc. I double check them, but for whatever reason, they've changed in the last 24 hours or whenever you use this. And then there's just a glossary for some detailed terms that are used. But
let me add one thing while you get out of that, Emma.
yeah.
So the other thing that I will tell you all is that there are only certain things that we have the ability to do on your side in Amplifund and Una. So like setting you up as a user, changing your password, we cannot do that. Like we don't have the functionality to do that. It's not that we are refusing to. We literally cannot function in the system to do that. You have to get that done through your internal processes. So if you send us a question, hey, I'm going to pick on Chris because she's the first name I can see with her camera on. And Chris sends me an email that says, hey, my password's not working. I'm going to send you to the Zendesk, not because I'm being complicated, but because I literally cannot help you fix your password. I can't reset it for you. I can't tell you what it is. I can't do any of that. So just know that if we say email the help desk, and when I've emailed them about questions myself, I typically get some sort of answer. There's an auto reply that comes back with it, so within a minute or two, but I usually get some sort of answer feedback from them within the day. So if you're doing your quarterly reports, I will tell you, just like I did with the application, please do not wait until 15 minutes before they're absolutely due, because you won't get an answer probably within 15 minutes. But go in and take a look at them the day before, a couple days before, a week before, and see what you can get plugged in. Because if you do have questions or you run into issues, you may need to reach out to them to do that. So, all right. Margaret. We asked Margaret to do this. She's been having some technical issues this morning, so hopefully those are all in the past, but we'll go with it if she does. And so Margaret has done some expense entry on a different grant in the past, but she is an IBT grantee, so we wanted her to be able to share and kind of help walk some of you through it. And one reason, another thing I will tell you is that on the grantor side, ICCB side, we cannot see what you see on the grantee side, which is again why we are asking Margaret to share her screen. So what you're seeing is what you see, because if we show you what we see, you're going to be really confused when you go in to plug in your expenses, because it's going to look completely different. So that's why we're having Margaret do her screen share to walk through how to add an expense. What does that look like? So you can see, so you can know, okay, yes, this looks like what we saw and this is correct. And the document that we've shared hopefully matches. And we walked through it with Margaret yesterday and she said it did. So we're going to go with it matches what you see. All right. Margaret, how do you get into your grant? Because when I see you guys do it, it's not how I do it at all. So
I just want to make sure that you can see my screen.
Yep.
And I'm going to go over here to grant management and to grants. And I'm going to pull up the FY26 IBT.
Yep.
Grant. And this is where I'm at. So you can walk me through from here.
Okay, so we're going to start with entering expenses. So you're going to go into post award, into financial. If you click on budget, it just shows you where you are in your budget, but we're looking for expenses. So you want to plug in an expense. Click on expense. This is where it said, if you want to see all of your previous expenses, you're going to use that run button right there. But this is quarter one. And so she hasn't plugged in any expenses. So there's no records found because she hasn't plugged any expenses in yet. And that's okay. So now she's going to go to that plus button there. And that's where she's going to click on the create button. And what do you do on this screen, Margaret?
From here, the grant is already named. So I'm going to pull down to personnel. And then...
Or whatever category you're plugging it into, correct?
Correct. I can choose any of those that I would like. I just usually start with personnel. And then the line item, you have to choose IBT.
So the line item for each of your grants may not be IBT because it's going to be whatever you built your line item as. It may say staff, it may say personnel, it may say wages. And it's going to be dependent. What's going to be on there is what you built in your budget when you started. So we ask you to collapse all the lines into one line. that's the name that's going to pull up. So IBT may look different from grantee to grantee because you may not have labeled it that way. That's the way Margaret labeled it. So that's what shows up on Margaret's system.
So then I'm just going to say I spent $10,000 for personnel. And then the expense date, I'm going to put March 31st because that's the last day of the quarter. And then the expense status, I'm going to change that to reviewed.
And Emma mentioned that each of them have to be in reviewed status. That's where she's talking about. That's where it has to be changed. If you leave that as general, it won't let you pull it into the report.
And then in description, I'm going to put salaries and wages.
And we're going to show you why in just a minute.
And I'm going to hit create. And it pops down there. So and you can see right here where I put salary and wages. That's exactly what shows up there. Where if I would have left that blank, it would have been blank.
So you can plug in whatever if you want salaries and wages, you can do that. If you want to list Margaret's name, if you've got 4 people you're including, it's going to that description. We don't care what's in that description. It's going to help you later. So whatever you need that description to say is what you need to plug into that description box.
You want me to do that again?
Sure. You can delete that one if you want.
I'll delete it at the end. So I'm going to put in a different category.
Sure.
I'm just going to put in fringe benefits. And I'm going to make this $2,000 so that you can see the difference easily. Again, I'm going to change the date to March 31st, the last day of the quarter. The expense status, I'm going to change to reviewed. And I'm going to put in benefits and hit create.
So and for example, in salaries and benefits, so Margaret, have you been told to lump all of that together, or does it matter? Because I've also seen programs list in the salaries and wages category, Margaret 3,000, Emma 3,000, that's 6, Angela 4,000, because that gets us to the 10,000 number. I don't know that it makes a difference. So Margaret, what have you heard, been told?
I have not had to do that individually.
Okay.
I've just lumped it all together, salary and wages, and what we have spent for that quarter.
Okay.
And the same thing for benefits.
Okay. And for ICCB side, it does not matter how you enter it. You can, if you want to make this as simple as possible and do it like Margaret is, that's fine. See what your business office encourages you to do and wants to do, because you do not need, there's no requirement to attach any documents. Like we don't need a copy of Margaret's pay stubs or documents or Excel. There's nothing attached to each of these as like a receipt of sort. But you need to have those. So in case of an internal audit somewhere down the line, and your auditor pulls up Amplifund and says salaries and wages, what is this for? You can show this month is for these people for these amounts. We don't need that, but you need to make sure you have it if that question ever comes up.
Correct. And we have that all internally.
Okay.
If you were to make a mistake and benefits was 1,500, you can put a check mark in front of the line and hit delete, and then go back in and create that again. I could have probably also edited the document too.
Yep. So payee, where's the payee? Because I just saw somebody's question in the chat. Does the payee status always stay Chris's? You can click on that payee, see what that does. Where it says payee other, select payee. Can you click on that drop down? Okay. So you could, if your program feels like you need to break out these benefits, that create new would be where you could add Chris Matheny, Margaret Sagerson, Angela Gerberding, Emma Godwin. I don't know what all is included in that creating a new. I don't know if it's simple name or if you have to have all kinds of other information with it. You can explore that and see. And then you, within your benefits line, you could show Margaret, Angela, Chris, or Emma would show up in your payee list. If you don't select any, then yes, it will stay as other. So again, some of these pieces will depend on your internal requirements, internal wishes, preferences. Okay. All right. So then so now you've got the expenses in. Is there anything else you have to do, Margaret, before you go build your report? Or are you good?
Not that I recall.
Okay. I don't think so either. So you go back into post-award and down to management and reporting periods. When you click on, and again, you've got the reporting period start date and end date. Okay. You're going to go up to the plus button. Is that right?
Yes, we did that yesterday.
Oh, we
so
did do that yesterday.
Yep. That's why it's already here.
Yep. And because she saved it and not closed it, it's still there. And so she can go in and she can do whatever she needs to do with it. And this is where you're going to attach your quarter financial report. And Emma, we will make sure that we include those when we send these, your performance quarter chart, report chart, and your financial report chart. So there's where you're going to plug in your financial chart. If you had an IBT grant in FY25, when we started that grant, we said you could put everything on one tab. Now, because we are doing expenses, we need both tabs utilized. So your expense tab will have your expense in your financial report. Your achievements tab will have your performance report. Please make sure you use both tabs when you're plugging in your reports. Don't stick them in together. It causes issues on our end that we didn't know it was going to cause, which is why we are now making this change at the beginning of a new grant. But you're 25, if you're a 25 person for that grant for the last quarter, you can still combine them if you wish. But moving forward into 26, they need to be separated. Okay. And then because she's done this before, it autofills for her final report for the reporting period. That's going to be no, because it's not your final report for the award period. That award period is your grant cycle. This is quarter one. So this is not your final report. I really hope this is not your final report. Is an alternative file or exceptional external database for the grant reporting allowed? No, you have to use what we provide. You can't make up your own report. Periodic financial, no changes from prior reporting period. No, you don't have one, so you're good. So when we get to quarter three, and you're in quarter three, and you suddenly realize, oh my gosh, I totally forgot to add the expense for quarter two in personnel. You go back and you add them for quarter two. You need to make sure that is a yes, because then we know to go back and look at your prior reports, because that will change what they look like. If we think we've already looked at your quarter two, we're not looking at your quarter two again. But if you change it, you have to let us know that, and that's how that happens. But if there's no changes, it's a no. And then, so there you go. You can see Margaret's budgeted amounts in each category. At this point, she spent $10,000 out of personnel, $1,500 out of fringe. And in that variance for period, what we figured out yesterday is it takes your total award amount, and because there's 5 quarters in this, it divides them by each quarter. So Margaret's total amount, if she were to equally spend her grant dollars each quarter, she would spend $34,360.48 in each quarter. That's not likely to happen, particularly in quarter one, because quarter one, you're starting up. There's a lot of planning that's happening. You're not probably doing a lot of paying of instructors. Maybe you're hiring instructors still. So there's not a lot of money moving in quarter one. So we know that. So that's going to tell us she is underspent in that period right now for $34,000. Then variance grant to date. Again, it's only quarter one, so that number is the same. But in quarter two, that 34,000 number will stay, but that amount will double because now she's got two amounts of that 30. So we will look at those. So if you are seeing large numbers in these, be prepared that Emma and I are probably going to email you and say, we have your financial reports. Thank you very much. You seem to be on the low spending end. Do you need help? Do you have a plan? And that's because we don't want to wait until after we get fourth quarter. And then in quarter five, we're like, oh my God, you have to spend your money. We don't want to send anybody into a panic for that. We don't want you all in a panic for that. We want you thinking ahead. We want you spending your money appropriately, legally, ethically, allowably, all those things. But we would rather you do it earlier and be able to get everything in that you need rather than waiting to the end and hoping you can throw it at something that sticks. So that's why we reach out. So don't feel like it's anything personal. We are just trying to make sure we are staying on top of where you are. Anything else on this you want to explain, Margaret?
Just the budgeted amount. I would not get too overly worried about this column here. Just worry about the total amount over here because that's what you have put in for the quarter that you have spent.
Excellent. And that close and save at the bottom is where if she was done, she could hit save. Or now she can hit save. She doesn't want to hit close because that would send it to Emma and I. To Emma.
And then I'd have to email them and ask them to
reject it so she can finish the rest of it.
Correct. Anything else that you would like me to see, show on here?
If you go over to click on your expenses, click on the achievement tab.
It's grayed out, so it won't let me do anything.
So it won't let you because then this is where you go back to the reporting periods at the top. The gray, yep. When you click on that, then you go back to add the plus button in the corner. Then you go to achievements. So you've done expenses. Now you do achievements. You're going to select the time period. And Chris, while this is loading, your question about will it show in negatives? Yes, it will. It will allow a negative in different categories. Now we will see it and we will do the quick math to know if you are moving, deviating allowable amounts or if you just deviated like your entire budget category. And we'll reach out at that point. But yes, it does show negative deviations. And we look at those to see if it's in line with what you can or can't do. But yes, it will allow you to do those things. So then in the achievement side, this is going to be a little easier. Again, you go to where you need to attach your document. This is where you're going to plug in your quarterly report form that we are going to send you. You're still going to plug in the same information again. Final report for the period. No. Is an alternate file allowed? No. Please, please, please. Like, we cannot tell you enough. And if you send us a different file, we will reject it and send it back to you and tell you to use our file. There's a reason we use it. Again, some of those same, are these on schedule with performance schedules? Yes or no? Maybe you're not. Maybe maybe you said you were going to hire somebody in quarter one and you haven't been able to. So you can make that a no, and that puts you into that box that says, we were slow in hiring. Our HR department fell apart and we couldn't get anyone hired. We did a round of hiring, but no one was qualified. Whatever it looks like, you can put that explanation there. Is grant performance is consistent with grant to date expected services and expenditures? Again, yes or no? You tell me. The thought is these questions are making you look at, are you on track with where you need to be? Okay. And then again, at the bottom, save or close, sends it to us. I'm sure you have questions. I want to make sure Dalton and Amy have time for their piece as well. And we're right at 10:30. You are welcome to email us questions. Again, we will go over this again at the April operational meeting, but we know some of you want to start planning submitting these right away, and that's fine. We will be sending you the documents. We'll send you all this information. Feel free, if you are one of those early people, you are welcome to reach out to questions. We will jump on a call with you. That is totally okay. we are open to all of that. We just want to make sure that we get into the other side of this as well. But again, we will go over this again in April. So you can see it again then as well. As long as Margaret's computer is working in April, we'll do it again in April. So, yes. And if I'm gonna, before I hand this over to Amy really quickly, because Kenneth just made me think of something. We have a listserv for the FY26 grantees. Initially, we plugged in the 2 people, the primary and the secondary people on your application. If you believe you need more people than that, we can have as many people as we want. Please send us, you can put in the chat right now if you want, or send MRI an email that says we need to add this person with their name and their email to the listserv so they're getting information, and we can do that. Don't care if it's programmatic, don't care if it's fiscal, could be an instructor. You can make those decisions, but we can add people to the listserv without a problem. Okay, I'm going to stop talking. Over to you, Amy.
No, you're good. And I can talk fast. Dalton can talk pretty fast. But yes, please put your email in the chat. We can get that over to Angela if you want to be added to that. And then we're going to really shift gears right now, and in a very true sense of the word, from, money entering to introduction to grant writing. And this was really a response to all of you saying, hey, we'd like some tips. We'd like to kind of just have a little refresher. And what better time than March and St. Patrick's Day? So to really come back and talk about what we're looking at for grant writing. So this morning, those of you who don't know me, my name is Amy Julian. I'm the director for the Illinois Center for Specialized Professional Support at Illinois State University. So welcome, everyone. With me presenting today is Dalton Byers. And Dalton, I'll let you introduce yourself real quick.
Hello, I'm Dalton Byers, Educational Research and Outreach Specialist with ICSPS, and I've been working with Amy since July.
And he's been all things IBT, so he's probably very familiar to all of you with our support for Angela and Emma with the IBT project. So we're going to dive right in, and I kind of got ahead of myself there, but the next slide is, hey, that's who we are. We can share our emails if there's questions, and we're going to go into just some tips about grant writing. So to give you a little background, I've worked at ICSPS, which is an entirely grant-funded center, for 20 years. Prior to that, I worked at ICCB, where I administered the Perkins grant and a couple other state grants at ICCB. Prior to that, did a little bit of grant work with ISBE. So I've eat, slept, and breathed grants for my whole career. So got some good tips for you today. And then I'll let Dalton share his credentials when those come up. So a couple of key terms we're going to talk about today. One is the budget. And we all know the budget, but just kind of level set is always good as we start a presentation. So the recipient's financial plan for carrying out the project or program is your budget. Just a little tip. A lot of times when people are reviewing your projects, they're going to look at your budget first, and then they're going to go and they're going to say, okay, when you tell me what you're doing, is it in your budget? Are you paying for that? The grantee is the legal entity that has been awarded the financial assistance under one discretionary grant or cooperative agreement. So looking at who many of you are, you're the grantees. So that is that relationship there. So you have the budget, you have the grantee, and then the project means those activities described in the application. So what is your project that you're taking on? For example, at our center, we have 13 different grants. So we have 13 different projects and scopes and all of that fun stuff. So we're going to jump right in with some tips and strategies. And some of these might seem a little commonplace, but I cannot stress them all enough because they are also very important and essential to a successful grant application. Number one, read the directions. Don't assume the directions are the same. Don't, think that they're just like last year. Read the directions, see what they want. Number two, follow the directions. Again, seems like, of course, Amy, why would I read the directions if I'm not going to follow the directions? But you have no idea how many times in my tenure that I've had personal experience where I've been reviewing grants and had somebody just not follow the directions or make it flavorful or added their own sparkle. We love your sparkle, but make sure it fits within the directions and what's been laid out. Number three, I already kind of alluded to this, and it is one of my big key things, is be sure your budget aligns with your plan. One of the things that we do at ISU, or ISU requires us to do, is something called a budget justification. And so you have a budget and then you write out, so anybody at ISU above me who has to approve my plan understands where I'm spending that money. So I have the proposal, I have the abstract, I have all the narrative, all that great stuff. But then they require us to have what we call a budget justification. And that really is a nice way to really seal the deal between, hey, the budget has to align with what you're planning to do. And then number 4 there is reference the rubric. Most of the time, I don't want to say all the time, but 99.9% of the time, they're going to tell you how they're going to be gauging your success. So you're applying for this opportunity. This is how it's going to be graded, if you will. This is how your success is going to be determined. Read and reference that rubric. So 1, 2, 3, 4, very simple. Read the directions, follow the directions. Be sure your budget aligns with your plan. And that's not the last time you're going to hear me or Dalton say that today. And then reference the rubric. We're going to look at things like the quality of the project and the excellence of how it's proposed, quality of the evaluation, things like that. But we'll get to that in a little bit later. Everybody good with the 1, 2, 3, 4? Woohoo. Take your shot of Guinness for 10 a.m., right? We're good? No, that's not happening everywhere? Okay. I'm just seeing if you're paying attention. All right. Funding priorities and your application. So the thing is that when you look at your funding priorities, these are used to help guide you as an applicant. So spend some time here. Funding priorities are used to communicate the required content focus of the application. They give a priority or identity to the funder's interest. So if they say, hey, we are wanting you to do this, in the application, they're going to assume you're going to be finding a way to do whatever that is. They're going to ask you to identify your interest, the specific approach, the targeted population, the way of focusing a competition, I can't talk there, and identify activities that will be funded in a given year. So when you're looking at your priority scope, as you dive into that, reading the directions, focus on their funding priorities. What are they there to fund? And sometimes a grant that you have or have had before will shift priorities from year to year. We are all very aware that last January, the priorities for the federal administration shifted from what it had been in 2024 to 2025. And so we want to be mindful of those shifts in funding areas. You also want to identify the funder's interest in a specific issue, target population approach, or addressing the interest of the funder. So what are they trying to accomplish? One of the other things that I've seen happen, which is funny, but not in a good way, is you'll be reading a grant and it's for a great project, but it has nothing to do with what that particular project was for. So it's almost like when you're reviewing applications for a job posting and somebody's just sent you the same resume. So you want to be sure that you're being customized to the application that's being submitted. And then what do the funders want to know? So what they want to know, and this is kind of really nutshell, but what they want to know is what is the problem? So you need a need statement. What is the problem that you have identified? Why is your organization able to address the problem? You have capacity to fix the problem. You know what the problem is. This is how I can fix it. Why is your organization the one that should be selected to do that? What do you plan to do? Your work plan. Put that in a nutshell. If you're awarded, you probably have to do a more in-depth one. But what are you planning to do? What are those things that you're going to do? How much money do you want? There are give and takes on, should you ask for the maximum allocation or allotment? Should you not ask for the maximum allocation or allotment? I would say ask for what you need to do the job that you are saying you can do. It doesn't matter if it's right at the top of the budget or it's somewhere lower in the budget. Ask for the money, request the money that you need to accomplish all the things that you're spelling out that you're going to do. Who else is contributing? Are you leveraging any partnerships, allies, anybody else in the community? Who are you partnering with? What positions you well in your organization or your community to be able to do this work? How will you measure success? How are you going to determine that your project was successful? Are you going to have evaluation mechanisms? One of the things that we do, for example, is every professional development event that we have, every Wednesday webinar, every professional development event, you get an evaluation. Everyone gets an evaluation. And so then we look back on that and say, hey, did they like that? How did that go? How did that presenter do? If you've been to, and I'm going to do a shameless plug, Forum for Excellence, if you've been to the Forum for Excellence and you've seen the lovely presentations there, all of those are part of that evaluation as well. So we do measure evaluation, but your funder's going to want to know how. How are you going to measure evaluation or measure success? And then how will you keep things going when the funds run out? There is always a portion of a grant that says, where do we talk about sustainability? And it is very common for people at the local colleges and at local programs to say, well, we're doing it for this program, but when the money goes away, it's just going to go away. Think about sustainability from the beginning. Think about how important this work, this problem is that you're solving, who you are the best person to solve it, and then think about the way in which it can sustain after you get this grant to have it go for a while because of your partners that you're going to leverage, or you're going to bring them on later, things of that nature. So feeling good there, all things you've heard before. You're like, yes, Amy, we knew we had to read the directions. All right, I'm going to pop it over to Dalton. He has some top 10 grant writing tips.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Amy. And I hope you all were listening closely, because in my previous like tenure before coming to ICSPS, I worked in the grant administration office at Illinois State University, and before that on yet another grant. And so I've been working with the budgets, I've been working with the application process very heavily. And so following the directions is hard. I've worked with many a people, and I myself even sometimes you know, read through them and then miss some, because frequently the directions are incredibly lengthy and there's subparts and there are more subparts. And it's to make sure things are consistent and fair, as well as to make sure that it's a equitable approach to understanding what's going on. So just be sure you read through it closely, read through it multiple times, and then create checklists. That's how I would approach that. But to the top 10 lists, be concise. Unlike what I was just doing with my introduction, use few words. Make it clear, make it understandable, and don't drone on. These people have a lot to read. Help them out. But in line with that, though, be approachable in what you're trying to talk about. Not everyone is an expert in every field. And so the people who are reviewing may have some general understandings, or may have related expertise, but may not have expertise in your specific field. And so be sure that other people can understand either your science or your, philosophy or whatever you are bringing in to explain why your project or why your personnel are the right people to solve the problem. And when explaining the problem, use common language when it's possible. And when you have to use like technical language, explain that technical language while still trying to be concise. Set smart goals. So we were talking about like timelines and things of that sort. Make sure that they're specific. By quarter 1 or quarter 2, we're going to do this. Make them measurable. This many people are going to be served, or this much like product will be, delivered. Make sure it's attainable. Quarter 1, Angela has mentioned this. Every past experience I've ever had, things move slow at the beginning. HR, you have to work with HR, you have to work within the systems that exist, as well as you got to get on the phone to talk to partners. And that isn't just overnight. People are going to say yes and already start and move as fast as you may want. And so be attainable to that, how things normally work. Be relevant to their priorities and be timely. And so be consistent with how you're kind of approaching those goals. Proofread your final submission. We all make typos. We all have a lot of things running in the background. And so sometimes if I'm talking to someone and I'm trying to write up a quick email, I'll look back over it and I'm like, oops, I just started transcribing what I was saying out loud. That person has no need to know about my lunch order. So just make sure that you read through everything, spell check, have other people read through it, because when you're thinking you're being concise and you're making technical language make sense, it may not be. So be sure to proofread. Use the forms. Angela harped on this. Everyone who's reviewing it, you have to use the forms. If you don't, that's going to really hurt your application if it is even reviewed. And that is sometimes a automated process. Depending on the funder that you're applying to, if you submit a form that is not their form, this system itself will just say goodbye, which is sometimes even when you're applying to jobs. Amy kind of used a application, like an interview resume sort of thing. If you submit a resume that just does not compute, then sometimes you don't even get reviewed. that's the same for these forms. So be sure to use their forms. If you have questions about those forms, ask in advance, ask early. Review agencies will often have information about that. Amy, you unmuted?
Yeah. Are you ready to move to the next one?
Yes, yes.
I do have one thing to add before, and I just want to hit it again, is that number 2, when you submit your application, you're not just submitting it to Emma and Angela. There are other people who are reviewing your grant. So please explain your partnership, explain the responsibility. If it is a continuation project or it is something that is continuing and you called it, the SMART program, and they don't know what that means, that leads to a little bit of misunderstanding and basically makes it sound like you didn't read the directions. So don't assume that your audience is familiar with all your work and knows all your acronyms. Please spell out your acronyms. Please approach them as if they are. And one of the really good practices, and ISU makes us do this as well, is I have to send it to somebody who has no idea what I do. They're learning now, but I mean, the person who's reviewing my grant they're not in my day-to-day. They're not the Angela to me. They are somebody who is just, okay, I'm reading for clarity and consistency. And so that's really important. Just make sure that somebody who could pick it up, which is possibly a reviewer, knows exactly the quality of the product that you're developing.
Excellent. Yes. Yep. And so kind of the next step of those things is don't be afraid to ask questions. ICSPS, ICCB are here, but even when you're applying to other grants outside of IBT, the reviewers want you to succeed. Their work is to find the best possible projects to address the needs in their priorities. And so they want to find the right people. And so they don't want needless barriers to prevent good projects from succeeding. So ask questions. Look on their websites for FAQs and deadlines associated with questions. Sometimes agencies, especially if they're very large, some of the federal agencies will have deadlines, weeks or even a month in advance saying, okay, in order to make sure that they provide equal support to all applicants, they can't be answering individual questions after a certain point. Or they've already gathered all of the questions that they can possibly handle. They've created FAQ website. And so that's where you're going to go. So just be sure that you're looking in advance. Sometimes there are webinars to answer questions, things of that sort. So just be, this will probably be said later, but also just in any situation, work ahead. Number 7, all items need to be accounted for. Items listed in the budget need to be mentioned in the narrative and vice versa. That's where that budget justification kind of document, whether it's needed for your personal institution or the actual grant application, is such a good document because it makes sure that you look at your budget, the Excel sheet or however it manifests, and your actual narrative, and you're like, okay, well, we talk about travel in our budget because we need to get to this place. Don't assume that the reviewers are just going to be like, oh, well, yeah, of course that's how much it costs them to travel and that they are going to a conference. If you don't mention the conference that you're going to as a part of the project in your narrative and you're asking money for it, that's going to raise red flags. That's going to be like, okay, are they being consistent? Are they being mindful? And so just be sure that you're tying your budget and your narrative together. They need to be seamless. Spell out acronyms that's been mentioned. Don't be afraid to be innovative. Reviewers are looking for creative, innovative solutions to problems, especially the Innovative Bridge and Transitions grant. It's right there. So just don't be scared to try new solutions, especially ones that you've thought through, ones that you've kind of started developing partnerships to address problems in an innovative and creative way. So creativity is often very valued, especially when sustainability is then thought through afterwards. So that shows that you put a lot of effort, time, and expertise into the application. Question whether activities are worth repeating, and if they are enhancements, explain them. Or if there are enhancements, explain them. New fiscal year means new plan. So this comes in that sort of a sustainability piece. Sustaining weak or ineffective processes isn't helpful. So just be mindful of that you need to do reflection and taking those assessment pieces that Amy's talked about into the future as well. It's not just let's ask people for their input and then not read it, or let's ask for the input and then ignore it. That's not good practice. So when someone gives you input, and many of people do, and there's like a consistent like, hey, this isn't working, this isn't working, this isn't working, maybe we should change that thing, and think through how we can change that well. So next. Oh, and for reference, we'll share out a document that just has those 10 tips after the webinar as well. So you can look forward to that as well. Some common mistakes that I've seen in a lot of my reviewings is failing to allow enough time for submission, either by mail or more commonly electronically. Trying to do a whole submission the week of, the day of, is just asking for a train wreck. And so that's yeah, it can get very messy because frequently institutions have their own processing time. Program, that you have to have other approvals above you. Seldom can you just say, I want to do this, write up a nice letter and hit send. That's not gonna frequently work. So it doesn't also allow time for proofreading and things of that sort. Not reading the application package in its entirety. It's very easy to miss necessary forms, necessary signatures. So make sure you read it thoroughly, slowly, and at least twice. Not following format guidelines. That's another one that can get auto rejections. It's like, oh, especially some of the federal or very large grants require certain fonts. And I know it sounds silly, or certain page numbers or like spacing. And I've had grants that get auto rejected. Sometimes a soft rejection of like, hey, you have to change this. But sometimes they're like, nope, we will not review it. You didn't follow this specific formatting. So just be mindful. I already mentioned signatures and proofreading. So it's all about the details. Big picture's great, but you do need details. So sustainability, we've talked a lot about this. I want to leave some time for questions, so I'm going to kind of go through this quickly. Ensure the plan is realistic, that everyone in your organization has input. So if somebody is going to be helping you write curriculum, please talk to that somebody, whoever that is, especially if you're being specific and mentioning them in the action plan, including timelines, like make sure that they have input on how we talk about that. Because they're going to have expertise, and B, going to know how long things actually take. Build in regular reviews and reflection. We've kind of talked about both assessment as well as when you're planning forward, remembering those assessments and how we can address some of the shortcomings. And then ever present, make sure board members review the plan status quarterly. So as you finish those quarterly reports, make sure people at your institution know how you're succeeding and ask for support. And when you see that there are kind of gaps between ideals and where you're at. SWOT, this is a very common kind of assessment technique, strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. And so as you are either executing or as you're planning ahead, think through what are some of the strengths of either your program or your center as you approach a problem. Think through like, we are uniquely good at X thing, and here's where we see weaknesses and how we're going to mitigate those. And sometimes threats are hard to spot, and sometimes they're easy to spot. We know that sometimes institutions move slowly, and so we're going to need to factor in a quarter just for getting the ball rolling on certain agreements or certain like initiatives, because we know that HR is going to have like these sorts of steps that have to be followed, and those just take time, or accounting, or whomever, and so that takes time. So be sure you keep in mind what could threaten your success and planning accordingly. And I think, yep. So submission tips. This is kind of the logistics person over here. When I was over in that research office, I was always telling people, hey, here's the deadline. And then also, here's the deadline we would really rather you work with, because then we can actually make sure we submit it on time. So plan early. Don't plan to submit it the day of even, just to make sure you mitigate any last second issues. If you're submitting an electronic one, know the specific date and time. Sometimes it's 4 p.m., sometimes it's 3 p.m., sometimes it's 11:59, but it's 11:59 Eastern and not Central. Or if it is 11:59, but you have to have someone like in your grant office submit it, they're going to tell you, I'm not staying here until 11:59 to submit your grant application. So both know what the funder is saying is the deadline, as well as your institution is going to have its own kind of deadlines. Uh, Technical problems happen all the time. Thankfully, I think Margaret got her stuff kind of working up and running this morning, but sometimes you just can't predict it. So be ready for last minute adjustments, save things in multiple places, and as well as again, don't wait until last second. And then proofread. That's the only way you're going to be able to catch mistakes as they come is if you have other people reading it. So I believe that's kind of my last major comment.
I do have one other comment, and it's worth noting that Emma and Angela and whoever at ICCB is going to take time to write whatever application process, whatever NOFO, notice of funding opportunity, that is released. And they have a way in which they want it responded. And I'm not saying just Angela and Emma, anybody who's writing a NOFO is very intentional about what they're looking for. So be sure you're finding the response that meets their expectation, but also be sure you're answering all their questions and highlighting those things. They're not just throwing these together willy-nilly, like, oh, let's get the money out the door. They're very intentional about what they're asking for. So be very intentional about what your response is. And that wasn't it. I should have put that in there for us. Any questions, or Emma, any closing comments as we're 2 minutes?
I don't think I have any closing comments. It was very thorough and I think really helpful tips and tricks. So thank you guys. But are there any questions from the group? Okay, if not, thank you, Amy. Thank you, Dalton. That concludes this. Our next operational meeting is next month on the 21st at 10 a.m. And I hope to see everybody there. Thank you, everybody.
Thank you.